Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana, episode 24. This week, we are joined by Moyen, actually permanently. Moyen is going to be a new host on the podcast. If you don't know who Moyen is one of the best card game players I know, probably one of the best card game players in Lorcana, currently ranked in Grandmaster, was up there at rank 3, rank 5, I think at some point. And just an overall fantastic player, very articulate. I mean, I've been speaking to Moyen about card games since Marvel Snap, Flesh and Blood, big One Piece player. Just, I don't know. You can hear it in my voice. I'm a big fan of this guy, so really happy to have him on the podcast with us. And yeah, I mean, I think he's going to bring a good competitive angle to the pod. So just want to officially welcome you, Moyen, and thank you for coming on.
I think I've done so many guest appearances. It's kind of silly to keep calling me guest, so and I've been having so much fun doing them that I think it's a good time to just join permanently.
Yeah, I'm super interested as well with the 3-person dynamic. I think it'll be great because usually my favorite episodes in any podcast are with guests, are in that sort of 3-person dynamic. I think it adds a lot of depth. So I'm excited. Anyway, I want to hit it off hot this week. We had a lot of comments on last week's YouTube video, which, by the way, I want to tell you all, we really appreciate that. And I reply to all of them. We'll read them out on the podcast as well. So if you want to get yours read out, shoot us a comment on YouTube. But to start off, we have Nico Ran. They say, hi guys. First of all, I want to say, keep up the good work. I just love the podcast and the in-depth analysis of cards, decks. So thank you. As I agree with what most of you guys say, the take on Bippity Boppity Boo had me mind blown and falling out of my chair. Saying BBB is a bad card is a hot take. As mentioned below, admit it's a combo piece, but what a piece. In Emerald Steel, you can have lethal combos. When the new beast is on board, Quest Beast, Shift Tink, and damage, Ready and Quest Beast. No, I might be overrolling you, Moyen, with a bunch of cards, but we'll get to them. We'll review all these cards, by the way. And he says, then sing Bibbidi Boppity Boo. It can be this. It can be the same big tink, and the small tink can serve as ink, do damage again, Ready Beast, Quest, attack, and do damage, Ready Beast, and Quest again. Follow it up with Fire the Cannons.
Oh my god.
You now can play with the 1 extra ink, Ready Beast, Quest again. This is a 10 lore gain and probably a board wipe combo, all made possible with 1 card, aka BBB. In Emerald/Amber, shift Rockstar Stitch, sing BBB, play Mickey Friendly Face, the new Mickey, I think. Quest for 3, pay 3 less for the next character you play this turn. Just some example. So I replied to this comment. And let's just talk about Bibbidi Boppity. If you forgot what this card does, so this card is a 3 cost, and if you're listening on pod platforms, on YouTube, we actually have the card images popped up, so it might be easier to follow. Bibbidi Boppity Boo is an Emerald card, it's an action song, it costs 3, cannot be inked, and it says, return chosen character of yours to your hand to play another character with the same cost or less for free. And this can be sung by a character with 3 or less. Any songs, extra, less, whatever their cost is. So there's a little bit of a confusion we had with Bibbidi Boppity Boo, but I believe you can replay the same card you bounce because it says return a chosen character, then play another character with the same cost from your hand. I don't know when this game actually checks like your hand, and if it's recognizing the card you bounce is the same card because they're different play areas, but we'll kind of assume you can. It doesn't really change our evaluation of the card. I would say even if we evaluate it the better way, we're probably still going to have our doubts about this card. But I'm going to pass over to Moyen call real quick, but basically what I wrote back on YouTube is that it's not that this card is bad, it's just that this card is not a high value card inherently, right? So there's a huge deck building cost of playing 3 cost uninkables in your deck. And this card is absolutely not a 1 card combo. It's a 2 card combo. No questions about that. You're going to need other things in hand, other things on board. It is a context-based card. So the inherent value of it is pretty low. But if we evaluate it in context, we can go farther with that. So let's talk about some of the more powerful things you could do with a 2 card combo. So say you bounce back a Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, the 9 cost. You bounce that back and you're able to play it back from hand, if that's how this card works. You would effectively still just be playing Dragonfire, but for 3, which is good. Cheating to ink is fantastic. It's really good. But for me, that's like a ceiling. When we start talking about 2, 3 card combos, plus there's contextual things happening on board, this for me is just a little bit too much Magical Christmas Land. Could it be good? Yes, it could. But it's very specific. It is relatively narrow. And this card by itself is a very risky card to have in your deck. I mean, if you're playing an Emerald deck, maybe you're playing it with Amethyst, but pretty quickly you're going to be in top deck mode. You won't have a ton of card draw, and the last thing you want is on turn 7, turn 8 to rip a bippity boppity boo off the top of your deck potentially. So I just want to reiterate, we don't think this card is necessarily bad. We just think it's very context dependent, right? It's probably good in a specific combo, but by itself, I'm just not super excited for it, sort of in a vacuum, if that makes sense. Pass over to you guys.
So I didn't quite get all these crazy combos that we can
There's
do
a
with
lot,
it.
yeah.
Regardless, my comment on it would be there's cards that are like this, that are like have a certain power level every time you draw them, and the range is very small in them. And then this card would be, a lot of the time it would be quite bad, and some of the time it would be maybe a bit better than other cards. But is that enough to justify how bad it can be in a lot of circumstances?
Yeah, there's a concept of evaluating cards based off their ceilings, their deltas, or their averages, or their floors. Most of the some of the evaluations we get as feedback are definitely hyper focusing on the ceiling. The thing is that usually you don't want to evaluate cards by that. Ceilings are great, but I think that the first thing I look for when I look at a new card is what is the floor? What is the worst case? What is this card usually doing? You know, what are the bad case scenarios? What if the board is not going my way? What if I'm behind? What if I'm ahead? What does this card do? And if the answer is nothing, usually that card, the risk of actually putting in my deck goes up drastically. And even on average, right? Like I talked about, if we're bouncing one of the most powerful ETB into the battlefield effects of the game, which is Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, and then we're reflickering it back into play. You have to understand the Bippity Boppity Boo itself costs a card, and it costs 3 resources. It costs an uninkable card. So in that scenario, which you're flickering a 9-drop that kills something, you're just playing Dragonfire, but for 3. But
don't forget, we might have a 3-drop on board as well, and then we can sing it.
Yeah, we can.
And then it's
so again, let's add another layer to, like, there's like another thing that needs to be going correct, and it's just it's a lot of hoops, and I think that's where a lot of the traps in evaluating cards can come, is when you start adding, like, as soon as you talk about 3 cards to pull off a combo, or you talk about 3 different individual things, this card plus that card plus this thing on board, like that's a lot to ask. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's a lot to ask. Kawa, I just want to give you a chance to give your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, just one of the combos that was pointed out there, I don't quite understand where, like, so when we see, it says in Emerald Amber, shift Rockstar Stitch, sing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, play Mickey Friendly Face, quest for 3, and pay 3 less for the next character you play this turn. But if you do Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, like, you can't just instantly quest with your card as it comes into play, right? You can't do that.
Yeah, I still assume there's summoning sickness. There's nothing
there should still be. I mean, it doesn't say to play another ready character
it can
or
also,
like ready
attack and quest this turn.
Yeah, it doesn't say ready in it, so like yeah. I mean, I agree with what you said, Brendan. I think that there will be combos with it, and it could potentially be good.
Yeah.
But it's something I picked up as well, that it is very important to start evaluating. Like, as we're seeing all of these cards come out, you should really be looking at the floor. A lot of people tend to get excited and see, like, oh, this crazy combo can do this, but it's so situational and so contextual. So overall, I'm still intrigued and excited to play with the card, but yeah, I think it's just quite slow in what it actually does as well, right? I feel like there's going to be a lot more faster things that are going to be coming with this set.
Yeah, I feel like, though, some of the most unfair things you're doing, at least when you're combining this as one other card, is like you might be cheating like 2 resources effectively. Because I think a lot of people look at Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo and they think about the effect, but then they sort of forget that it also costs a card, it also costs 3 resources, and it also is an uninkable card in your deck. Like, those are all costs that you're paying regardless of the effect you're getting. So that is significant. I did write out a pretty lengthy reply to Nico, and I asked for a deck list because I want to give a shot. They said, I tested the deck with the available cards on Pixelborn. Deck is a late game deck and is too slow for the current meta. Aggro kills it before it pops. When it pops, it's unstoppable though. Sorry. There are cards that synergize that are not available on Pixelborn yet though. So Pack Tactics, for example. Also, discard decks are faster and more fun. Yeah, I mean, Emerald is packed with discard. I agree with that. I got to enjoy that. Yeah. So yeah, we appreciate the comment, Nico. And yeah, if you want to get yours read out, shoot us something on YouTube. Here, the next one is from Christopher X Gordon. I said, if you guys haven't seen the prototype for the Emerald Steel discard combo deck, you need to look it up. Right now, the deck is a rough draft and kind of a one-trick pony, but when it works, it's insane. You play Bell on 5, then follow up with John Silver type effect to force your opponent to challenge. Then sing a whole new world with Bell and draw a fresh hand. If your opponent doesn't draw the answer to Bell, they are forced to challenge it and discard their entire hand, and while you have a fresh 7. With the True Drop Guide that lets you draw extra cards for each card the opponent discards, the strategy gets insane. Yes, it's a 3-card combo, so they acknowledge that. At minimal, that is weak to removal, but if you land it, the game is virtually unwinnable for your opponent. There are some interesting videos showcasing the deck floating around online. So, dude, there's a combo there that I didn't exactly think about, which is actually John Silver with Bell.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really good combo.
Yeah.
It is. It works really well because, like, I know we actually played a few test games on Pixelborn, Brendan, and I was playing an Amber Emerald deck. I was running kind of the Bell package. I was actually doing just in time into Bell, which was definitely a bit memey, and it pretty much did mean that, I mean, you just never hit into the Bell, or you have to have the answer for it, right? But combining it with an effect with like Reckless that John Silver can give, I think that's like having to force your opponent to essentially discard their hand. It's a good feeling. It's definitely a good feeling. So I think that's a 2-card combo, at least I think you'll see pretty often. And if you can get the whole new world off as well, it could be interesting. But I don't know. Again, I do think people looked at Bell and instantly went, oh my god, this card's insane. But like at the end of the day, if there's no Reckless or whatever, you just don't have to, not that you don't have to touch it, but you have to have removal, right? You have to have like a Smash or Dragonfire. If not, it will just keep questing for 3. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
It's Bell is an interesting card. We'll get into that. Basically, we played with some decks on Pixelborn, so we got to play some of the new cards. Bell is annoying, but it's not crazy at all. And I think that people before playing with the card thought it was absolutely insane. If you shift Bell, or if you just in time Bell, and somebody Dragonfires you, you got owned. But if somebody smashes you, you got like mega owned. Like the amount of value in terms of cards and resources that you lost in that exchange is just a lot. It could be a meta call, right? Like maybe Steel is just a bit more favored than Emerald. They kind of always have been. But yeah, Bell is, I think it's a good card. I think it'll be played in Emerald. But even so, I was playing Ruby Amethyst Control, and we were using it as sort of a litmus test deck. So didn't change much. We had like Mana Mim and the new Merlin that draws 2 cards effectively. So it's basically the same deck list, which is a deck list that should get wrecked by Bell. And even on the draw, so it means I'm whole turn behind where I want to be in terms of getting my removal. Kawa was just in timing Bell on turn 3. So like, okay, I just have to get, he's going to get 4 or more lore out of this, and I'm just going to Dragonfire it, which is a good exchange for you to an extent. You technically did just in time it, so I still kind of get better value on that trade. But because of the amount of quest you got, it just seems fine overall. I want to get your thoughts, Moyen, on this combo. I know we're talking about maybe some cards you haven't had a chance to touch or think about too much, but or maybe you could also hit on where you think Emerald is in this set, because I know we were talking before last time you were on. It just looks ridiculous.
So for that, I think we can do that evaluation later when we've seen more cards. But I think this combo is that we're talking about isn't all that potent, but the best thing about it is that every single piece is also decent on their own. So which really makes a good combo. So even if you have the Bell without any of the other stuff, it might be totally fine. The John Silver might be a little bit, what's it called? John
Silver, yeah.
Yeah, John Silver. Might be a little bit below card quality average, maybe slightly bit on its own, but it's still a fine card. And then I think this 2-card combo is basically enough to be very strong. Even if your opponent doesn't have all that big of a hand, if he has to go down to 0 cards, that's still huge, even if you don't have an entire hand. And then a whole new world is just a little bit of the cherry on top, which I don't really think is necessary. If it's good in the deck, sure, play it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to play it just to have it for this combo. Because it's, at the same time, it makes the combo better if it happens, but also makes it more likely that if your opponent plays removal in the deck, that they actually do get the removal, they don't have to trade into it.
Yep.
All right. The last one here is from Roro Bear. They say from a strictly practical standpoint, I hate sideboarding. I hate having to pull cards out of my pull cards out of my deck and put them back in, and then after the game pull those cards out again and return them back to the deck, the normal ones back to the deck. I've had long tiring tournaments where I've forgotten to reset the deck, started a game with too many or too few cards, and I just hated lol. But that's personal preference, and this is why I picked this comment. I see inking as in-game sideboarding, and I find it extremely fun and elegant and rewarding. Of course, not every tech card can be inked, but the fact that you don't have to play every card in your deck since you can ink something solves that problem. So we were talking about sideboarding a little bit last episode, Moyen, and talking about maybe it would be added in a later time. And I thought that this response from Royo was it was a really good response because I hadn't really thought about inking like that. And then the more I considered it, it actually makes a lot of sense because you do have cards that are much more powerful in some matchups rather than others. But the difference about Lorcana is you can turn those cards into resources. So I just want to get y'all's thoughts on sideboarding once again, because we did talk about it last week, but also in the context of this idea that inking is sort of a derivative of sideboarding.
So in general, I never really loved the gameplay experience of tech cards, so I don't necessarily like sideboarding, but this mechanic of inkable cards being good in some matchups versus in others makes it so that you get less punished for trying to play these cards in your deck that don't go just for your own game plan, but actually try to interact with your opponent. And I think that's very interesting. And it might mean that sideboarding is not necessary because if there's enough inkable cards to hedge for certain matchups, that might just be enough to reward good deck building, adjusting for just the decks that you expect to be facing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I primarily come from card games that have sideboarding or pre-boarding in them, and Moyen is quite a good Hearthstone player, which is a game that doesn't have that, so it's more sort of analog to
the one time we had sideboarding in Hearthstone, it was the most hated format in the entire game. It was even tournament form. It was Specialist, where you had how was it? You didn't have a sideboard, but you had to submit 3 decks. And each version of those decks must be up to 5 cards different than the other version. And then you have to play the first version game 1, and then you can switch to a different version. There was just 5 completely dumb tech cards that are like completely swinging the matchup if you do draw them in the right time. Like, let's say a weapon destruction card. Like in Hearthstone at least, that just made the gameplay experience worse than if you just had to play your normal decks against each other. If it became more about, did you draw tech card X until turn X?
Yeah, I actually got to see a tournament. I saw coverage of a tournament that ran that format. And I think that Conquest is infinitely better. Hearthstone's in an interesting spot because they have the multi-classes, and card availability is better than a physical trading card game for the most part. So people can field multiple decks in something like Conquest. Because like Flesh and Blood is a hero-based game as well. But if you ask someone to show up with 3 heroes or 5 heroes, it would be like the most ridiculous idea. Because these are physical cards, right? So cards that exist in both decks, you'd have to actually be swapping them out. So I do love Conquest, but it doesn't really have a good paper analog, unfortunately. Anyway, we're going to head into some headlines before we get into spoilers. I'm particularly excited for spoilers because we've got Moyen here. First off, I want to start off with just the current state of the Pixelborn ladder. Definitely ramping down. You know, people are really excited for set 2, probably experimenting with new cards. I did mess around a bit on the actual ladder, so playing just the normal ladder. I don't know. My takeaway is that there's an absolute ridiculous amount of aggro. I played aggro almost every game, to be honest, and because of that, Ruby Amethyst definitely felt very middling. Because I feel like Ruby Amethyst against a lot of these green decks, like play draw doesn't determine whether you win the game, but it's much nicer to be able to play than it is to be on the draw. There's another great deck that you could play, which is Wheel Steel, or honestly, mid-range Amber Steel is even better because you don't want to be wheeling against aggro decks anyway, or casting Whole New World. That's what wheeling means. So yeah, current state of ladder, a lot of aggro. I'm sure people are not engaging with it as much because it is the end of the season. And I think if you want to have success, because there's so little Ruby Amethyst and control decks on the ladder, I think you might as well just play the OG, like the old school Amber Steel mid-range list, to be honest, which I think are terrible into Ruby Amethyst, but I didn't encounter one over quite a few games, which I thought was funny. All right.
Yeah, definitely interesting.
So like I said, Kawa and I got a chance to play with some of the new cards, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I was playing the sort of like the test deck. But Kawa was playing new fun decks. I was playing the boring old deck. So I played our Ruby Amethyst list, which is on YouTube if you want to check it out, with the Evasives. And I swapped out some cards in order to get Mata Mimin, which is a ridiculous card. It is the 3-cost 4/3 that has Rush because to bounce something back. And I got the Merlin 4-cost Uninkable, which draws a card when it enters play and when it leaves play. So effectively draws 2 cards. Very much the same deck. I just want to say, yeah, kind of what we already see at the top, which is Kawa did test shifting Bell and this like just-in-time cheese, and it did not feel as powerful as I thought it would be against control, because I thought Bell was like very, very hard for control to beat when I first saw it. But honestly, Bell quests for so little that if you have any sort of board presence before then, you're able to clear out threats. You kind of just Dragonfire the Bell on 5 and it's still okay. Cusco later, even though Cusco, I don't know how many Uninkables they could play, but if they were still playing Cusco's later after reaching a critical maximum or minimum of lore, like 12 or 15, yeah, it would still be pretty tough, but it felt reasonable from the control aspects, is what I want to say. Also, I think against any just-in-time deck, I don't know, it's hard to be on the draw sometimes. As Ruby Amethyst, it's hard because when they cast just in time on 3 and then you're a whole turn behind on Dragonfiring that big threat, it can be tough. But that was sort of our take. Kawa, any other decks that you tried or that you were sort of playing around with?
There was one other one, but I do want to just mention just another point about that Bell is like you said, like obviously if you have the removal on turn 5, it's really good. But even after I kind of just in timed and stuff like that, there was still a lot of cards in the Ruby Amethyst list that can easily deal. Like once I quest that Bell, I mean, you've got Rafiki, you've got the new Madam Mim that if you have to get rid of it, you can get rid of it. You've got Gaston if Gaston's still on board. So yeah, I do think if you can combine Reckless with it somehow, it would be like super good. But for the most part, you do get value out of playing the Bell, but the deck still has a lot of answers to it. Way more answers than I initially thought as well. But yeah, the other deck I played was Sapphire Ruby, which is interesting. I was trying to mess around with like the small Cogsworth, shifting into the bigger one, giving everything kind of resist and stuff like that. You know, fortunately for Brendan, Ruby Amethyst doesn't really care about resist. Doesn't really deal damage too much. I mean, if there was trades, it did actually matter, but for the most part, it was just like, oh, I shift my 2-drop, my 2-drop Gaston. I play the big 6-drop Gaston onto it, and this Dragonfire. I'm like, well, I just, I mean, what was the point of that, right? So, but the one thing I will say is that deck, Sapphire now in particular, in combination with Ruby, does have access to more draw cards by the means of Gaston and a few other cards that we're probably going to be checking out today, actually.
Yeah. It's actually really funny that you mentioned Ruby card draw, because like Dinner Bell is a card that I think either you, I, and Spessy talked about, or you, I, and Moyen talked about, and we really dunked on that card.
Yeah.
But I constantly see on my feed people talking up Dinner Bell and talking about all the cards they're going to draw at Dinner Bell. There's definitely been more support that's been printed, I'll give you that.
Yeah, there is more support, yeah.
But it's still not great to banish your own character on conditional damage counters and try to draw cards. I mean, Ruby doesn't have any card draw, so maybe it's good enough because of that. But yeah, the cards that people are excited about, some of the cards that people are excited about have been questionable for me. Like the main one is Zero to Hero. Zero to Hero, okay, it's hard to. I will die on the hill that Zero to Hero is a bad card, but it happens in card games that there could be a specific combination of cards that exists with Zero to Hero that is just degenerate and broken. That is so unlikely, but it's possible, and you can all laugh at me if that happens. But ultimately, Zero to Hero is it's not a good card. But all the new builds I see on Twitter are like, oh, this broken Zero. I can't wait to brew Zero to Hero, this broken Zero to Hero deck. And I'm just, that card is definitely Magical Christmas Land. Moyen, for you. Oh, if you have something to say.
I just wanted to say, like, let's say in 1 year, after multiple sets, there's suddenly a tier 3 deck that plays this card. If anyone comments, "Oh, I told you so," then we're in trouble.
Yeah, they can have that one.
Not dealing with that.
They earned it. I just want to say for you, Moyen, because you and I were talking about these cards in particular, Mana Mim. And Mana Mim we knew was going to be powerful, so the reason why Mana Mim is powerful is because the 4/3 is Rush. But it has the downside, you got to bounce something back. Well, I was playing 7 1-drops in my deck, 7 inkable 1-drops, and basically I would just curve out my 1-drop every single time, Mana Mim it back. So I would be able to play on the play. I can play my 1-drop, which Ruby Amethyst, by the way, that 90% of the time that's an incorrect decision. You don't play your 1-drop. It's a land, or it's an ink. You should be inking that card. But you can play it out, and you can have insurance against like a turn 1 Lilo from your opponent on the draw, which is great. But then when you play down Mana Mim, you bounce it back and you turn 2 land. It's not there is a tempo loss there, but Mana Mim is very, very, very powerful. It seems like something that Ruby Amethyst, or at least Control, kind of needed to keep up with some of these aggro decks that are putting down absolutely ridiculous things. The other card is particularly interesting to me is Merlin. So Merlin is the 2/3/4 cost uninkable that quests for 1, but it says when you play this character and when he leaves play, you may draw a card. So this is very often draw 2 cards. It is very understated. I would say this card felt good. It felt good. I don't know. I was pretty, this card to me is pretty questionable because if you look at the current state of Ruby Amethyst, it can't really add many more uninkables. Like it can't. I mean, maybe if there's a different deck building philosophy, but in our theory, which is around 20 to 21, which is backed up by the hypergeometric math, we can't add much more. This card as an uninkable felt pretty good in the deck, to be honest.
Yeah, so basically, because I think we're both very, very, in love with current version of Ruby Amethyst, so I think it's very easy to talk about that. I think that card looks good to me. Also, I would add maybe so a big upside of Madam Mim is maybe you don't have to play as many Rafikis because this can deal with the issue while being inkable. So that makes your deck better and reduces the amount of uninkables you have to play. And you also you also talked about the 4-cost Merlin, right?
Yes, the 4-cost 2/3.
Yeah,
I think that card's pretty good too, because it's not the card that's it's not you play this card and it's stronger than it's not necessarily stronger than what your opponent does, but it's if your opponent tries to just like either remove this or somehow deal with it, then they can never do it efficiently, because even if you always get lore out of this card. You get one when you play it, you get one when it leaves, and if they don't remove it, you also at least threaten one.
I think we're looking at different Merlins, to be fair. There's 2 Merlins. I think you're looking at the goat. I was looking at the rabbit.
Yeah. I know, but
okay.
But like the rabbit is the uninkable that I think is good because now we have less uninkables. But I think the 4-cost Merlin that is inkable is also really important.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, 4/3 is a decent body in terms of stat line. You think
it still requires something to get removed, and it's so much chip lore, which for a lot of other decks wouldn't matter as much, but for this deck, this will really add up over time.
Yeah, it's interesting, Moyen, because actually, Rise of the Floodborn. I'm not sure how many spoilers you've seen, but it totally changes the dynamic of how Lorcana plays right now. So currently, there's only one card that can help your opponent win off of or like gain lore that isn't currently represented on board. That card is Eye of the Fates. They can also shift, but that is something that you can kind of see.
Or Aladdin, if it has Rush.
Yeah, so like most of these things you can kind of anticipate. They're very much like they're kind of telegraphed. Rise of the Floodborn totally changes it, where people will be gaining lore based off unknown information. So based off cards that exist in hand, and you actually won't be able to, like, in 90 to 95% of the scenarios, you can just see the lore your opponent's going to get. That is absolutely no longer the case. Like, Rise of the Floodborn completely changed that dynamic, which is super interesting. Awesome. Well, let's get into the spoilers. Let's do it. So we have, I don't know if we're going to skip the French spoilers. We've got some in French, and
I have the translations.
Okay,
if you
great.
Want.
Okay, great. Yeah. I thought we were going to have to rely on Moyen's French.
Oh, please no.
All right. Yeah, since we got the 3-person dynamic, I guess I'll just read them all off so we don't have to Trying to toss it up. So the first one is Grand Pabby, oldest and wisest. It's a Sapphire card. It is a 3/6. It costs 7. Is uninkable. Storyborn Mentor. Quest for 3, and it says Ancient Insight. Whenever you remove 1 or more damage from one of your characters, gain 2 lore. Your thoughts?
Good card. Good card. I think we talked about it. I know you might not be as high on this card, but there's some cards now that I think if you compare, I compared it to just stat wise or whatever. I compared it to say Hades. Hades is very good because it does remove one of your opponent's cards essentially. It is a 3/6. It's only quest for 2. This quest for 3, but there are some cards from set 1 even that may be decent in coming into set 2. For example, I mean the most basic example I could say is Dingle Hopper, right? Like that's the 1 cost item that you just tap it and it's just 1. So that could just be 2 lore. But there is a bit of AoE healing and stuff like that. And I think there's, again, I'm kind of diving deep. I should be just looking at the card as it is, but like with some support, I think even getting 2 lore, possibly getting 4 lore out of this when you kind of play is like it's pretty powerful. I think you can get a lot of lore pretty fast, but let me know your thoughts.
Well, and I want to let you know before I pass over to you that we are evaluating the spoilers right now, mostly card to card because it's hard. But next week, so the eve of the release, we're gonna do a full set review and we're gonna be evaluating cards in the context of the entire set. Because a lot of these cards, like Grand Pabby's one of them. There is context here. Like, is there more cards that facilitate you actually pulling off the beneficial effect here? Is there removal that deals with this? Rise of the Floodborn makes it easier, etc. I have one question before I pass it to Moyen. Is if you heal something with Rapunzel and it has 3 damage counters, are those damage counters removed individually? Or the way it reads, it looks like it's at 1 instance, right? Because remove 1 or more damage.
It's 1 instance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 1 instance. Yeah.
Over to you, Moyen.
Yeah, I'm not. So I like the card's alright, but I think 7 cost uninkable needs to be very good a lot of the time for me to really want to play that card. So from first impression is like this can make an already is a good greedy card in an already greedy color. So you would maybe want to play this in a Sapphire deck where you need a little bit more instantaneous ways to get instantaneous lore against slower control decks.
Sure.
I don't really think it needs that. There was one, but I remember there being a blue I think AoE heal card that I liked from first set. Can you help me out? What was it?
From the
Blue
first
AoE heal. Oh, is that? You might be thinking of Magic Golden Flower. That's the only thing I can think that heals in blue.
Wasn't there a character that healed?
Oh, Jasmine. Yeah, Jasmine heals.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true actually.
And that card is playable. That card has competitive body as well.
When I tested blue decks in set 1, I really liked Jasmine. So that was the first thing that came to mind.
It's also a Floodborn, I think.
Yeah. Oh. Whenever plays, you may remove up to 2 damage. Yeah, so I think that's the best synergy that I can think of. But in general, I think what this card can do will only be good in very certain matchups. So it's more of a tech.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that Hades is like the Hades effect is just so good on its own.
It's the thing is the Hades effect is like so universally good.
Yeah.
The condition's very easy to meet where Hades is good. The condition for this you have to build your deck around, and then it might not be as strong as being able to instantly remove something.
And we can look at Ursula as well, which is a 7 cost inkable in a different color, which is Amethyst, but like Ursula gets all of its value just immediately, right? It comes down, it makes your opponent lose a lore, it draws a card, and it's just like 2/8 that quest for 3. Obviously the power levels are differing in terms of colors, but this is just, again, Grand Pabby is a card where it's like, yeah, you could lose this card. Your opponent could have a deck that's built around it. This is probably a card that needs a deck built around it. But this card it's contextual. You're jumping through hoops for power, where it's like you know, in other colors and probably in Sapphire as well, there are cards that are just good on their own where you're not jumping through hoops. And that's like one of my biggest heuristics for card games and card power is like when a card is like, do this, 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 and this, it's like, you should probably just be doing the ones that's like, oh, it just hits the board and like absolutely, it's just immediately powerful. Things like Ursula. So that's my thought on Grand Pabby. Do you want to read out Lucifer for us, Kawa, since it's in French for me?
So Lucifer is a 5-cost uninkable emerald card. He is 2/2. This is a rare. Quests for 2. It reads, Mouse Hunter. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and discards 2 cards or 1 action card. So either they discard 2 cards in their hand or an action card. It seems pretty bad to
when this quests?
When you play this character.
When you play this character on 5, so you can just in time this, and it effectively almost has You Have Forgotten Me printed on it as well. It is a very badly statted body, quest for 2, which is fine.
Uninkable too, which is tough always. Yeah, I don't think it's that good, but we have seen You Have Forgotten Me have a lot. I mean, okay, would you play this card in so far what we've seen out of the discard emerald stuff? Like, would you slot this in? I don't think so. I think there's probably better cards, but it is active. Like, I play this, you discard stuff, but I'm pretty sure there's other cards like that with an emerald already.
Yeah, it's tough because it's uninkable, and in the aggro mirror, by turn 5, your opponent can often have 1 card in hand. Which lowers the value of this card significantly. Obviously, it's better against control, but because it's an uninkable, you don't have the luxury of being able to ink it into matchups where it's not as powerful. I just look at other 5-cost cards in Emerald, like Cusco, like Bell, which have different functions, but I think are just actually more powerful on average.
What do you think, Moyen?
I actually kind of like this card. I think it's pretty good, and I disagree with some of the points. Basically, let's say, I don't think this doesn't have to be an aggro card. This is more of like a out resource card. It's like it's a mid-range threat that also is hard to efficiently deal with because you already lost the card when this entered play. So what I wanted to mention is the card discard effect itself. Of course, maybe it can. Okay, you can never make your opponent discard 2 if they only have 1 card. But at least they have to discard this 1 card, so that's a little bit of an upside. They might have to discard something that I don't want if they have less cards. Also, if they have, like, let's say 2-3 cards in hand, this card actually gets a lot better because then it's less likely they have an action to prevent them from discarding 2 cards. While if you're playing against a control deck with lots of cards in hand, it's more likely they might have an action and they don't have to discard 2 cards. And in general, I think that so 2/2 is understated for a 5-drop for sure, but I think for this effect, 2/2 and Quest 2 is actually quite good. So comparing this with, okay, if you look at this 2/2 Quest for 2 is still a threat, right? Mm-hmm. We can agree on that, and also it's not a threat that's easy to remove before it quested once. So it's not easy to prevent this from questing once. So what I'm getting at is that if you compare this to something like You Have Forgotten Me, you could also kind of look at it in a similar light, as it's also generating card advantage, as it makes them lose a card and then it is still on board. So I think that can be very strong. So, because You Have Forgotten Me is also generating card advantage, but this card is generating. So okay, it's uninkable and it's 5 cost. So yes, it's more expensive, but this card is generating card advantage while still impacting the board.
Yeah.
So I think this card's pretty good. I like it.
It's funny because that's how you know Moyen has good card fundamentals, because this card is just a 2-for-1, and I think they added the action clause because it's too powerful.
No, if this just said this card too, then
it would actually just. But be I think it's
powerful. Still pretty good.
It's almost an inherent 2-for-1 that leaves behind a body. We're so You Have Forgotten Me as a 2-for-1 card, and it's very powerful. But it can be inked as well. This card, it leaves behind the 2/2, the quest for 2. I think that questing for 2 is actually a lot. So I think you're right there. I'd rather take the quest for 2 than this be like a 3/3, the quest for 1 potentially. It depends on my role in the matchup, but questing for 2 is quite a lot. So you sold me. I think this card is better than I gave it credit for. It is just an inherent 2-for-1. All right.
Yeah, and also I think in general, when I do card reviews in my card game career, I've usually rated a lot of cards very low. But I think this card's pretty good.
All right, the next one is vanilla. It's Lumiere. Is that how you say it? Lumiere. Yeah, so Lumiere. This is a Ruby card, 7/7, cost 7, can be inked, and quests for 2. Yeah, so it's vanilla, so there's no text. These cards, vanilla cards are actually like fine in Lorcana as you go down on the curve. So there's one that's particularly good, which is Cerberus, because of how annoying it can be. It was in the past for other steel amber decks to deal with that because they didn't have the access to 6 attack, but obviously it's cleared by things like Rafiki. So there's like critical breakpoints in Lorcana. 7 is definitely one of them. Like, not a lot of things do 7 damage. They either do 5 or 6, and 7 gets above that. That being said, I don't think that you can cast vanilla creatures at this cost. Like, I think you can play them at lower curves, but maybe not at 7. Like 7, we're talking Ursula, we're talking Aladdin. Like, there are better cards you can be playing. Is this also a rare? This is a vanilla rare.
Yeah, it's a rare.
Interesting.
It's a rare, yeah. It's the same as Maui. Maui's a vanilla rare. The big 8-drop.
Oh, it has Rush. It's not vanilla, right?
No. This is a steel.
Oh,
big
the unplayable one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is similar to that Maui.
Yeah. So, I think it's unplayable. Probably. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's like, so the vanillas that are lower cost, they don't cost X and have XX stat line quest 2. I think they have, for example, Cerberus has 1 more HP, or a lot of very cheap vanillas have a little bit more stats than just what they cost. And I think it would need to be the other way around balance-wise. So if a card's very expensive and it's a vanilla card, it actually should be very stat efficient to make up for it being an expensive card that doesn't immediately impact anything. So yeah, I don't like this card.
All right, the next card is my favorite card in the entire set. It's called Chip the Teacup, Gentle Soul. It's in Amethyst. It's a 2/2, 1 cost, can be inked, Storyborn ally, cost for 1. So I'm not sure if the owl is also a Storyborn ally, but what I will say is I'm very happy that I have options to play for my 1-drop 2/2s. That's awesome. I can go with the cute cup art rather than having the owls. That's dope. And I don't have to play Sergeant Tibbs anymore. I can have full Amethyst. These things could be, they maybe are relevant now, could be relevant in the future. Like, if you were playing 7 1-drops or 8 1-drops, it'd be actually just correct to play the all Amethyst rather than Amethyst and Ruby, because you'd be giving your opponent more information when you have the split potentially, and usually that's a downside. So there is some strategic advantage to this, in terms of the game, but it is cool to have basically alternate art for a one cost 2/2.
Yeah, and maybe there's Storyborn synergy that I don't know of.
Yeah, that one's like a harder one to evaluate just right off the bat, but I'll go on to the next one. Next one is Cruella de Vil, fashionable cruiser. This is in Sapphire. It's a 3/2, cost 2, can be inked, Dreamborn villain, quest for 1, and says, now get going. During your turn, this character gains evasive. So Moyen, as we progress through these cards, I just want you to keep in mind, I have a theory. That internally in their testing team, they knew evasives were, they figured out evasives were broken. Because in set 2, which was developed before set 1 was released to the public, there are so many freaking things in so many colors that have evasive, like tons of them. So that's my theory. It's a bit of a self-indulgent theory, but that's my theory. Anyway, Cruella de Vil, I think this card is fine. I mean, the fact that having evasive on your turn is good. It is. If you're, especially, this thing clears Pongo, right? Like this thing, yeah. So it's pretty well statted for yeah. So it's pretty well statted for a 2-drop. I like this card, but it's meta dependent potentially.
Yep. I think it's an okay card that if stuff like Pongo, Tinkerbell, if evasives with 3 or less HP become strong, then this is one of the better 2-drops to run into your deck. Or on your theory, I think I don't think as evasives maybe in their internal testing were necessarily that strong, but maybe they figured the gameplay dynamic of not being able to interact with evasives is unfun, so they wanted to have more stuff that interacts with evasives without posing as an evasive like this card. I think it's a good decision. Yep,
they print all these things to deal with evasives, but then they don't touch ward. You still have these fucking Cuscos and all this stuff coming. No, I agree with you. Anyway, next one is Sword in the Stone. It's an item. It's in Ruby. It costs 1, cannot be inked, and says tap 2 ink. So you have to pay 2 ink and tap this. Chosen character gets +1 attack this turn for each 1 damage on them. Interesting wording, because we just saw in whatever the blue 7-drop where it was counting damage counters being taken off as a single action, but now it's referring to damage counters as individuals. Maybe that makes sense. I think this card is unplayable, but I'll pass it over.
Yeah, so now we can, I don't know, buff our character before we destroy it with, what's the bell called? Dinner bell.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
The
Sure.
anti-synergy. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So basically, getting attack on stuff is a very circumstantial buff. So you only need it when you are going to trade something where you also need extra attack. And this, I don't know. I don't think. So basically, I think the floor on this is low and the ceiling isn't there.
Yeah. If this was inkable,
Yeah.
I wouldn't play it. If this was inkable, I
Sure.
probably wouldn't play it. All right, the next card is really cool. Enchantress, Unexpected Judge. It's a 1/1 in Emerald. Cost 2, can be inked. Dreamboard Sorcerer, Quest for 2 says True Form. While this is being challenged, this character gets +2. I believe this is the first time we see this effect where the character itself gets the attack. So I'm not sure how this Quest for 2, so your opponent has to deal with this, which is pretty annoying, to be honest. So I think there's a lot of scenarios where your opponent trades. You can manipulate the board state to where your opponent is trading down into it, which is where this card is good. I'm also like Enchantress is an interesting word to use. Obviously, it's the name of the character, but Enchantress in other card games tends to refer to a singular card that like benefits from getting like enchantments on it. So like buffs and stuff like that. So you can enchant it to give it power and then it gets an additional buff on top of that. So I wonder if they're kind of doing like an ode to Enchantress in Magic in a sense where it's like, if you're able to put a buff on this, it gave it like defense and then, you could kind of stack this thing up. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's a cool card. It's a cool tool. I'm not sure if it will go into green decks, but it seems pretty decent to me. I mean, the Quest for 2 is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's well protected.
It dies to 1-drops, though. I will say that.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot of 2-drops can die to 1-drops. Every 2-drop that's not a 2/3 can die to 1-drops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this card's really good. Because also comparing this to set, okay, we're now in set 2, right? Power level is bound to increase. But comparing this to set 1 cards, this compares very favorably. I think the inkable 2-drops in set 1 that Quest for 2 were like LeFou in Amber and Aladdin in Steel. And they were just 2/1s and 1/2s. And this is much better than both of that. Because if you're playing a 2-drop like this, that Quest for 2, you're not playing it to contest board, you're playing it to threaten Quest and try to get ahead in the lower ways. And if you're doing that, you don't care about the stats on your turn as much. So this having 1 HP can be a downside in comparison to LeFou. But for example, in comparison to Aladdin, which was played as just a 2-drop that can Quest for 2, this compares very well because this cannot get value traded by stuff with 3 HP. I think this card's very strong. I like it.
Yeah, it's really helpful when you draw comparisons to the other cards that exist right now, because that really puts it in perspective on how powerful this card is.
Because usually you would have to, the price you pay for playing a 2-drop that can Quest for 2 would usually be, my opponent can value trade this. This is very hard to value trade. And still does the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best 2-cost inkable that can Quest for 2 now is it's played like everywhere. It's just Flynn Rider. Would you say this is better?
Sure.
Than, I guess it's conditional. Obviously, it's conditional, right? But I think it's probably it's as good. I think. I mean, Flynn's so good because if they have to attack into it, yeah. Flynn. Every time I've played Flynn Rider against people in locals, they just go. I could see like a sigh if they're not, especially if it's Ruby Amethyst as well. They're like, oh my god.
Well, Ruby Amethyst is one of the cards that can kind of deal with it, to be honest, because they can actually discard and fill their hand back up. But yeah, Flynn Rider is just good.
So Flynn Rider is a very good card. It does get traded down, but at the same time, so by the trade itself, it just traded down. But then because you lose a card in hand, you lose value to get a little bit back on tempo, and it's very threatening. So yeah, Flynn Rider is probably even a little bit better than this card, but both of those cards are, I think, very good cards.
Yeah,
Enchantress and Flynn Rider.
All right. Next up is another vanilla. It's Cobra Bubbles, just a social worker. It is an amber. It's a 5/9, cost 7, can be inked, Storyborn ally, and quests for 2. So it's interesting.
It's the same as Triton, right? Triton and Sapphire, same cost, same stats.
Is
They've
it?
already printed this card. It's just an Amber. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm nearly positive.
it probably is. I mean, there's definitely some cards that that are unconstructed that are elusive to my memory. One thing I'll say for like heuristics is that I like cards with big butts in Lorcana. I like them way more than cards without big butts because you could trade more. It's just like it seems like the more valuable stat than attack often in this game. That being said, there is like this curve that is like they get exponentially worse as they get bigger, because if you have a big butt on something like a Cerberus and your opponent can't trade it via combat and they have to Dragonfire it, you trade neutral. But if you're playing a 7-drop, they can't be dealt with via combat because it has a big butt, but then your opponent Dragonfires it and trades value, so they trade up. Like, it just gets worse. So I don't like the vanilla creatures, or I love big butts. Clip that, I guess. But I don't like them on the higher cost characters as much because they can just be dealt with by single target removal. And of course, you're dropping this on turn 7, your opponent's going into their turn 7, maybe as Ruby and is playing the board wipe. God, I don't want to call it Wrath of God, but what is it? How is it? I've resolved this card hundreds of times. How is this?
Be prepared.
Yes, be prepared. Be prepared.
Oh my god.
yeah.
But what? Okay, hear me out. What if I have a million characters on board and then I play 0 to hero Cobra Bubbles?
Oh my god, broken the game. Oh my god.
Yeah, I think that's where this card belongs, is in that deck.
The 0 to hero deck. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it's better than Lumia, but it's still terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Has a big butt.
On to Mulan Reflecting is a 3/3 in Amber, cost 4, can be inked. It's a Floodborn hero princess, shift 2, so you may pay 2 to place on top of one of your characters named Mulan. It quests for 2, and says, honor the ancestors. Whenever this character quests, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a song card, you may play it for free. Otherwise, put it on the top of your deck. So that's a powerful ability. So how far below curve are we going for a 4-cost 3/3? Decently below. The shifting, I don't know why you would shift this card. Maybe shifting it seems like kind of a trap, but yeah, the only possible downside I see is like, okay, if you're playing a 4-cost and to trigger the effect, you have to quest, you're just triggering it once. So it's effectively kind of an enter the battlefield, but you get 2 lore off the back because it will likely be cleared. But yeah, I mean, cards like this, cards where you do something and you play the top card of your deck for free when you have a reasonable threshold of these cards in your deck to hit it, can be really good. That being said, I don't know if you can have what's the floor of this card? Is the floor of this card absolutely trash, right? Like, because if we look at like current song Amber decks, it's not crazy likely that you actually hit the song, to be honest.
No, it's not. I mean, how many I've whiffed so many times even off of Aerial, like that is it's wild. So yeah, I think it's very unlikely that this goes off unless you're playing even more songs that you play in the Amber song deck now, which is a decent amount of songs. It's a lot.
I think what you want to do with this card, and maybe it doesn't happen in set 2, maybe it's like a way down the line thing, is like you want to be able to kind of know the top card of your deck, and then you want to be cheating out like a really expensive song. Like that's where it kind of gets powerful, I think.
It's also where my mind goes. It's like it's this effect sometimes hitting a song, even if you play a lot of songs, doesn't make up for the stat line of this card. So, and also this effect isn't crazy enough, so I don't make my deck worse to play more songs to increase the likelihood of Mulan hitting. So I also think the only way where this card does become good is if there's cards that are already decent, where let's say you look at like the top 2 cards, draw 1, the other one stays on top, or something like that, where you know the top card, and then the song doesn't need to be crazy, I think. But if you have a decent amount of these effects where you know the top card is a song, and then you do this, I think it can be potent. But it's the only thing.
Okay, so I understand the shift 2 now, because shift 2 made no sense to me initially. So shift 2 is like it just increases the equity at which you can cheat out a song on a turn that it definitely should not be being played. So like a 5-cost or even a greater cost song, you're playing it on turn 2. In effect, I think that you would play this card in the scenario where you can reasonably manipulate the top card of your deck to be able to hit it, and you're playing some sort of song that on turn 2 kind of like wins the game or gets really close to that. Do we have enough pieces to make that happen? I don't know, but this is a pretty interesting combo enabler. I think it's
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Also, what's our cheap Mulan?
I don't know.
I'm actually not sure. I only know that the only Mulan that I know so far is it's the 5 cost in Ruby.
Yeah.
I don't know another
Same.
one, so I
But
actually haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, so they might not have shown it off yet.
There's a new Rush Mulan, but okay. I think so. Basically, because I think the shifting still doesn't matter as much because you need to shift and have already had an effect that filters the top cards of your deck. So I think it's very hard to get this off.
Yeah,
Even if you had that type of effect.
I think it's a
earlier
bad
than,
card.
like,
I do think it's a bad card, or it's not a good card. I don't think it's bad. I think it's just not good. I will say that, like, you know, we get another 1-2 sets in the game, and there's like, you know, there's big tournaments going on. Like there's usually like a Rolodex of cards that I have that I go back and look at and be like, okay, can I break the game with this card yet? And this would be one of those cards. Like this is a card. This is a card that could break the game.
Yeah, we would need like a 1 ink, 1/1 Mulan that can't quest or quests for 1 or something, but that says when you play this, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put them back in any order, and then you
that would be insane.
and get the song.
Okay,
something like that.
All right, hear me out. We have a 1 cost Mulan that is it's overstated, so it's a 2/2. Or maybe it's not overstated, but it's a 2/2. It's a 1 cost Mulan. It costs for 1. It has a downside. The downside is put a card from your hand on top of your deck.
But then you're already drawing that.
Oh, but then you're drawing it. So you have to put 2.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe then.
Well, put it on your second.
Put it on the second most top card.
That would be. They probably won't print that. That'd be super degenerate. If you like, yeah.
Good thing we're not game designers.
Yeah. All right. Next one is. Pinocchio, Star Attraction.
Pinocchio.
This is an Amethyst. It's a 1/1. It costs 2, cannot be inked, Storyborn Hero. It's a vanilla, but it quests for 3. Oh, fuck.
Specie is just like, oh, he's so happy that this card exists. This is a Specie card if I've ever seen one. Yeah.
This card's good, I think.
It's so
quests for 3.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's so much. That's like that's Cusco. That's Ursula. So I have a theory that if aggro decks got 5 to 10% more powerful and the other archetypes didn't rise up with it, that this game would be really bad because decks would just go they just go 90 degrees against each other and wouldn't think. This card is really I mean, there's a really interesting thing going on with Rise of the Floodborn where they're printing cards like this, which are in the current iteration of Control, which is like Ruby Amethyst is probably the peak Control, but you can even say some Sapphire decks. This card destroys them, but this card is not as good against Steel. So you're getting more reasons to play Steel, I think, as like a control color combination. But then this set also has Resist, which is anti-Steel, anti-damage, damage removal. So it's they've done well in designing it. There's some interesting pillars going on for sure. But yeah, this card is powerful. This card is really strong. We're gonna see it in aggro decks.
Yeah. So basically. So these 1/1s uninkables, they have a lot of cost to them and they get traded down. But the reason they're still okay is because you can build your deck around them and you can be fine with getting value traded because at least you got the 3 quests in already and that can be so strong for a deck. So I think this goes one step further to enabling a deck where you don't need to quest with your characters twice. You just play bad statted characters, quest with them once, let your opponent trade into it, and then you're fine. You're just playing the next Pinocchio or Maleficent or Lilo.
That's what Cusco already does. That's what Cusco already does, man.
So basically you don't... also, it's another step in the direction of being able to build a deck where you are not reliant on having that much ink. You can stop inking at a lesser amount and be fine with it and just keep playing stuff that quests for 2 or 3.
Yep.
It's a good card. It's a dangerous card, but it's a good card.
Yeah, so that play pattern definitely already exists, especially in something like Emerald Sapphire, where, you know, against the control matchup, they try to get to like 12, 15 lore, and then they're not actually competing on board or anything at all. And they're usually hellbunt, or that's a magic term for having no cards in hand. And they're just top decking. They're playing their character and they're saying, do you have Dragonfire, Maleficent, or be prepared? If you don't, whatever the value is in the bottom right of this card, I'm progressing my win condition by that much. And it's fucking annoying to deal with, to say the least. But yeah, Pinocchio, dangerous card, very powerful card. I'm sure we'll see it in aggro decks. It's a good card. All right, next up we have Prince Naveen. This is a steel card. And it's a 4/3, cost 3, can be inked. Storyborn Prince, and Quest for 1. So 3 cost 4/3 doesn't have Rush, so not the obviously doesn't have Rush. But this seems. Have we seen any 3 cost 4/3s?
I don't think so. No, I think this is the forced one. I think so. I could be wrong. The most of the 3 drops I've seen have been 3/4s. Like
yeah, but I think 3/4 is the better stat line, so I'm not in love with a 4/3 that doesn't have an upside.
Yes, but Cuzco, right? Like the thing is, the reason why 4. So there's okay. I agree. I'm a like we talked about. I'm a big butts guy. But in Lorcana, there is a very popular card called Cuzco, and you got to be able to deal with the Cuzco. I'd rather pay 2 and play a Gaston. It's a 4/2 that can deal with that, and I get more value on my trade. But, you know, we talk about all these breakpoints, like whether it's 6 or 7. There is a very prominent breakpoint in constructed Lorcana, which is if you're playing against Emerald, you need something that attacks for 4 a lot of the time. But
sure.
Yeah, I mean, this card is mid, I think. I don't think it's good. I think it's just mid. All right, here we go. Perplexing Signposts. This is a Amethyst card. It's an item. It costs 2, cannot be inked, and it says to Wonderland. Banish this item, return chosen character of yours to your hand. Unplayable. Pass
yeah,
to you.
I agree. Yeah.
We would need a very strong, when you play this character effect to enable this.
Yes. Yeah. Bad card. Yeah.
Next card.
We got Basil. Great Mouse Detective. There's a Sapphire card. It's a 3/4, cost 6, can be inked. Floodborn Hero Detective. Quest for 3 has shift 5. And it says if you shift to play this character, you may draw 2 cards when he enters play. It's interesting. By the way, so there's the Basils. They're being spoiled next. I'm just going to read them off now. There are both Sapphire cards. One is a 2 cost. There's a 2/2 that quests for 1. It has support, and the other is a 4 cost. It's a 3/4 that quests for 2. And those are the shift targets for this. I like the effect.
It's decent.
Yeah, I like the effect. I don't like that I have to shift it though, because I mean that shifting it changes it to. You're kind of drawing less. I mean, you get less value out of your cards, you know?
Yeah.
So basically, you're using 2 cards to get 1 character. So drawing 2 is a little bit comparable to just drawing 1, which is still all right because there's also inkable. You have to play the cheaper basics, which aren't terrible cards, but they're also not cards I would usually want to put into my deck. So the upside to me, comes from when you shift, you draw 2, which isn't that crazy, but also you get to quest for 3 instead of 1, hopefully, because you want to be shifting this onto the small basil. So when you shift this on small basil, this is actually quite alright, but when you don't, you're pretty sad, and you have to play small basil.
I think it's bad, so actually. The more I look at it,
it's not terrible, but it's not something I want to be doing.
Let me draw some parallels because it's quest for 3. So if you shift this onto the small basil, you effectively paid 8 for the entire exchange, right? And then we talked about how the card draw gets diminished because you're shifting it as well.
You paid 7, right? Because it's 2 and 5.
You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
But also this is a shift 5. So the thing about Sapphire, which is interesting, they play Mickey Mouse on 3. They'll often ramp on 3, so their turn 4 is a turn 5. There's another 5 cost character you could play that's a 3/6 that quests for 3 that I think is like way more powerful. I don't know. I'd just rather be playing Maleficent.
Really?
I think it's more threatening.
Because I think now that you mention it, so it is 7 ink, but at the same time it's not 7. So if it would cost 7, that's terrible. But using 2 ink on turn 2, which we talked about on this podcast, is kind of the least efficient turn to where you spend all your ink. And then only have to spend 5 more. So if you actually have the basil into Mickey Mouse into shift basil, that's a pretty good curve. So I still don't like this card. I'm just saying I don't think it's that bad.
No, that's like the best. That's the best scenario, I think. Right there,
and that scenario actually could be good.
Yeah. It is good, but then I'm kind of leaning towards Brandon's point as well. I think I just want a bigger butt that. Like, I mean, if you, I don't think it's justified to play this card in your deck because if you just have this as a 6 cost inkable, I mean, whatever, you can turn it to ink, but I never really want to play. I always want to play a Millicent. Like if there's no Basil on board, I don't feel like I feel good playing a 6 cost 3/4 like Quest for 3. But
my biggest problem is if you don't shift this. So I was like, because I mean, this card of control is actually like not that bad. You know, where it comes down, you draw 2 cards. Even if you shifted it, it's not that bad. But you would never play a card that literally it's like if you don't shift it, it's just a hot pile of garbage. Like a 6 cost 3/4 that Quest for 3 is like so bad, and then you need this other card. Like you absolutely need to be. I don't know. I feel like the floor on this card because of like it only being triggered if you shift, seems like it can be decently low. It's still playable. It's inkable.
Yeah. If it was draw 2 cards, if it just read draw 2 cards when it enters play, it'd be pretty good. It'd be a lot better.
I'd be playing Sapphire next set if that's what it said.
that would be like a better Surfer Stitch even.
Yeah, that would.
Better Surfer Stiff, better
Quest for more
Ursula. Well, yeah, cheaper Ursula, I guess as well. You're drawing more cards as well. Yeah,
that would be very strong. So the floor is a little annoying, but I think if you. Again, if you base on Mickey Mouse Pacer, then you're pretty happy. But in every other case, you're a little bit sad.
Well, I'll tell you, I hope we get there today. I know we're running a bit long, but I want to make it so we can do the full set review next week. But there is we have a Sapphire card that's a treat that's coming up in a bit. Anyway, let's try to go quick, especially through the vanilla one. So we got Queen of Hearts, Capricious Monarch. This is a 5/6 in steel, cost 7, can be inked, Storyborn villain, Queen, quest for 1, and says whenever an opposing character is banished, you may ready this character. So ready this character, that means you can quest with it. Doesn't have the condition there. It's a 5/6, so it's the same stat line as Cerberus, which is cost 5. Whenever it's I think that I would prefer to have Cerberus in my deck. This card doesn't get me too excited.
I don't like it. I think it's it's great. It is when it's when a character is banished, so it's not like one of your characters has to challenge something and then banishing it. So like you could use AoE, you could use stuff like that to kind of change this a little bit, but only quest for 1, which is kind of bad. Like not having that restriction to say you may ready this character but it can't quest doesn't really matter in my opinion if it's only questing for 1. But maybe it matters. What do you think, Moyen?
Yeah, I wanted to visualize how bad I think this card is. Because basically it's really not that impactful to ready up something that only quests for 1, as you pointed out. The question I am proposing is how many Eye of the Fates do you need to hit on this card so that it's actually a good card?
I still don't think if you're doing that, it's way too much work.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Bad card. All right, we got a vanilla card. This is Eli LaBeouf.
Big Daddy. They printed Big Daddy on a card.
That was Kawa's nickname in high school. So it's a steel 2/5 4 cost that's inkable that quests for 2.
Mr. Smee will cost 1 extra. You can quest for 1 more, basically. Yeah. Would you rather do you value the 1 extra lore for the 1 extra cost here, basically, or are you playing Mr. Smee? I think I'm playing Mr. Smee, but maybe the 2 is better.
I'm playing Mr. Smee because all of the steel decks that I've played are not like beat down aggro decks. So I think that they're different tools. Maybe the Smee is just better because the -1 cost. Yeah, I think it's contextual. I don't know. As the power level of the game rises as well, like cards like this become more and more unplayable. So.
Yeah, for sure. Big butt again. So
what do you think?
Ring the bell. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Moyen.
Sorry, I kind of lost track of.
Oh, we're on Big Daddy.
Eli LaBeouf, the 4 cost.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just talking about a 4/2/5. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Cinderella, and so it's like we're not power creeping. We're actually going down in power. I don't want that.
All right. Next one is Ring the Bell. This is an emerald card. It's an action, cost 3, can be inked, and says banish chosen damaged character. So this is an inkable card. It's cost 2 less than Dragonfire, but it's conditional on something being damaged. I know a lot of people are going to get super excited about this with Tinkerbell. I think that the problem is if you're behind, like this card is absolutely garbage. Like if you're behind on board, your opponent is controlling board, like this card could actually do nothing. And yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Moyen, it's a 3 cost execute. Like
Yeah,
just
I was thinking
Yeah.
about executes actually, or used to be a decent
It was,
card.
it was,
a
yeah,
good
but didn't they
card.
change? I think they changed it to 2, and then they reverted it back to 1. I think Execute was a 2 at one stage.
Yeah, it was a 2,
Yeah.
and then they made it a 1, and it's still not that good.
Yeah. So yeah, if this card was cheaper, it would be
The thing-
better.
the
But it's
thing
still
is-
like, yeah.
Yeah, also, I think in this game it's even worse that it says chosen damage character, because I think it's a lot harder to reasonably damage something without it being too inefficient. So
Yeah,
I
because
think
you
most
can't
of
hit
the
it with
time-
your hero, right? Like in Hearthstone,
yeah, you can't just play like mage, or okay, I mean execute was warrior card, but you can't just do a hero power or something, or have a
Sure.
very cheap AoE type effect, because Tinkerbell exists, but it's
I
expensive.
mean, yeah, the best thing you can do is it's ring the bell and what's it, fire the cannons. And again, that's a 2-card.
Yeah.
thing.
So I think because of those things being bad in this game, I think the best case scenario is actually playing something where my opponent has to trade into it, but they don't want to, but they still have to, like a Flynn Rider or something. Let's say that you play Flynn Rider, they have
That's
to
good,
trade
that's
into
good.
that,
Sure.
and then you do it. But if that's the best case, then I'm
Still not great.
not
Yeah,
too
still not
optimistic
great.
about
Still,
the-
you're probably, if they trade your Flynn Rider, more than likely now you're playing this onto like a Rafiki or something, so you're not getting value. I want to point out something. I caught you red-handed, Kawa, by the way. I caught you red-handed. We caught you in the act. You said if you fire the cannons and then you play something on this, that's 2-for-1ing yourself. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it's bad.
No.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is bad. So you can't. Yeah, definitely can't fire the cannons. I just my 2-for-1 bells went off. Anyway, Miss Judson,
You
Sapphire.
should rename that card to 2-for-1 bells. Yeah.
I've never seen a game, a card game before where people are more excited 2-for-1 themselves than Lorcana. It's we're working on it. We're working on getting out of that. All right, Miss Judson, Housekeepers is a Sapphire card, 1/5, 4 costs, cannot be inked, Storyborn ally. It quests for 2 and it says tidy up. When you play a Floodborn character, you may put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. That's a repeatable effect. The analog to this is probably Mickey Mouse, which is the 3 cost. Quest for 1 less, it's a 1/3. It depends on Floodborn. So Floodborn is Floodborn Matters is a hard, I don't know what you would call it, dynamic to sort of evaluate in this set without seeing the entire set and seeing how consistently you can play Floodborn.
You have to do a lot of
characters.
math, right, and see how many cards. You kind of get down to that stage.
But-
I think I would probably just play Bell over this card.
Which Bell?
You can the legendary Bell, the 4 cost 2/4 that you can basically ink 2 cards. I guess this is different though, right? Because it's the top
Yeah.
card of your deck, so you're
It
not
doesn't
using
use the
resource-
cards from your hand.
Sure.
So this does have some upside. What I've read on one of our other podcasts we did is someone mentioned Floodborn characters are usually more expensive characters.
Yep, because
So-
they shift in general. They shift.
So you can't really, let's say you're drawing this after turn 4, you can't really play this and Floodborn on the same turn. So it's more like, okay, you ink, you play this, and maybe then on turn 5 you can already play a Floodborn. Thing is, for this, okay, basically for just if you're going through the scenarios, when would this card be good? I think you would want to have this on turn 4, right? If you draw this late, it's a body that quests for 2, but it's nothing special. You wouldn't want to have this on turn 4. You would want a mid-ranged Floodborn that you can follow this up with on maybe turn 5 or turn 6. And also, I think you want a board state where you can quest with this without this easily dying. So if there's too much high attack characters in the meta where you're afraid of this getting traded down as soon as it quests, that makes this card worse. If it can actually quest and still survive the turn without, or your opponent has to use a lot of resource for that, then I think it can be decent. So I don't think this card's bad. I don't think this card's great. I think it's can be all right.
Yeah, I think I'm going to err on the side of bad. Actually, I think I'll go against the grain. I think this card is.
Sure.
I think it's pretty bad. Because, like you said, I mean, this effect later in the game is worse, and also drawing it non-curve is worse. And then you're also jumping through hoops where like a Mickey Mouse doesn't do that. Mickey Mouse, it just also comes out a turn earlier, and playing your turn 5 on turn 4 is more powerful than I don't know, getting it on turn.
I think you're right. Also, because now that I think about it, it's kind of like this card would only be good this card is actually like a lot worse than Mickey Mouse in comparison. And the only way, I think the reason why they made it worse is because it's repeatable. But you don't really care about this being repeatable, I think.
Yeah.
I think because it's too rare that this actually does the effect multiple times. So yeah, I think it's not.
All right. Next up, we have Bell Bookworm. This is a Emerald 2/4 that costs 3, cannot be inked. Storyborn Hero Princess. Quest for 1 and says use your imagination. While an opponent has no cards in hand, this character gets +2 attack. I think that this is +2 lore. Oh, that's way different. That's way different. Okay, that's way different. I still think this card is not.
Is it? Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I still.
I mean, it is different, but yeah, I think the card's still.
I think
great.
I think the card is bad, unless you're shift. But I mean, you won't want to shift onto this. You don't want.
You're shifting 3, right? Yeah. I think the bell is shift 3. So why would you pay?
Yeah,
it's really weird.
So you can play this on turn 4.
Yeah,
yeah.
You don't want to be shifting onto it. Like you don't want to be shifting your uninkable card onto another uninkable card. Like you're just like, oh my god, your deck is like never inking anything. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go bad for this card. It'll probably see play though. I think people will play this card.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to understand why this card is bad is that if the condition is met, I think you're doing fine.
You're already winning the game. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, if your opponent has 0 cards in hand, and you made them discard their entire hand of stuff, do you really care that much about this questing for 2?
Yeah, it's super greedy, right? It's super greedy. I think it's way too greedy.
So it's a win more
and the
card
payoff
at best.
isn't even,
Yeah,
and it doesn't even win more that much. Like, so let's say if your opponent has no cards in hand, you're usually in a good spot. But no matter in what spot you are, having a bell quest for 3 doesn't make that spot that much better. So I think this card will, like, most of the time be very below average, and some of the time it will be a little bit closer to below average.
All right. Next up, we've got Pack Tactics. This is Tactics. This is an Emerald action, cost 4, can be inked. It says gain 1 lore for each damaged character opponents have in play. So I'll tell you right now, a lot of people are excited about this card.
Yeah, because everyone's like, oh my god, Tinkerbell, grab your sword, so much lore. I'm like, come on.
And they're also the beast, so it's not like Magic where these triggers like go on the stack or anything, and you can like quest beast multiple times while it's resolving. I don't even know you can do that in Magic. But yeah, is this card bad? Yeah, I mean by itself, it's definitely terrible. It's definitely a really bad card. Like you can't play 4. If it was a card that said 4 gain 1 lore, it'd be super unplayable. If it said pay 4 gain 2 lore, it's probably still unplayable. I think
this was a song.
No, 4 gain 2.
You think
would be pretty decent in like an aggressive deck, and then not only do they have the reach of the characters, but then they also have that just from their hand.
Yeah, maybe you're right. So I don't know. I think this card's going to see play, and I think that decks will utilize it in a way that, you know, sometimes it's really powerful, but I think the floor on this is like pretty dangerous, especially if you're against control. Like, holy god, because control is deploying no threats to board anyway. Right? They're just, and if they are deploying threats on the board, you probably have like almost 0 cards in hand. It's tough. It's inkable, so I don't love it. I don't love it, but I could see it being played in some sort of combo-y deck that is hard for us to immediately think about because it requires a lot of cards.
Yeah. So without the context, we think this card's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, having your opponent's cards be damaged is, if you disregard context, inherently a bad thing. You don't want your opponent's cards to be damaged. If you want to damage them, you want to actually have them dead. So it's a cost already to have them damaged. It's not like this just it can happen, but it's usually we'll have to do stuff that you wouldn't want to be doing to make this card better. And I don't think you want to be doing that.
Yeah, best case scenario is that you're probably maybe getting, like, if you do 4 for 3, like most of the game, again, this could completely change with set 2, right? But like most of the games of Lorcana, I would say on average there's, I could be completely wrong with this, I'd say like between 2 and 4 cards on the board, maybe more so 2 and 3. I don't know how you guys feel, but like even the ceiling of this doesn't seem like it's so conditional for this to be like a giga value. You know, it could be okay value, and it could like help you get there towards the end. But I mean, max this is getting is 3, and if it gets 3, it's like fine. I think, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm down. This is one of those cards where we're gonna say it's bad, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, what about step 1 through 8?" And then this thing happens, and it's like, I'm okay with that potentially happening, and like this being a good card in that scenario. I think overall this is not a great card. I know it combos with Beast. I know. People are gonna be like, "What about Beast?" It's like I know about Beast, but
it doesn't Is Beast the one that readies?
Yeah, the readies.
When you damage something.
Yeah, but it has to get damage. That's another combo piece with the Beast.
It's a combo piece with the Beast.
So if you have Beast and Pack Tactics, then you have twice the pay of 4 actually damage.
And
if you've got 50 Tinkerbells, you're fine then.
Yeah. So
and then you also want your opponent to have characters on the board,
which is also not guaranteed. Yeah,
and then you want to damage them without killing them, just to gain some lore. And then what do you do with the characters after that? Do you then also do another thing, like another grab your sword and then clear it? Like you damage lore and then kill.
This card sits in your hand for the entire game.
It sits
in your ink.
I'm inking this turn 1 every game. It's best ink.
Okay.
It stays out of your deck, actually. Yeah.
I think it's funny because this one's definitely getting called out as a hot take from us, but I think it's like this is like it's just such not a hot take if you look at if you kind of draw conclusions from like how other card games have functioned with cards like this. It's just not great. All right, next one is Gumbo Pot. It's an item. It's in Sapphire. Cost 2, can be inked. And it says it's the best I've ever tasted. Tap. Remove 1 damage from each. Remove 1 damage each from up to 2 chosen characters. I was like, I don't know why it's a little tongue twister there. This is like is this kind of like Dinglehopper, but in Sapphire?
And Dinglehopper's 1 that just does 1, and this is a 2 that heals 1 on 2 things, basically. It's 2 Dinglehoppers in 1, basically.
Yeah. So there's a reason why I don't like Dinglehopper and I don't like cards like this, especially in a vacuum without context, is because they rely on.
Is Moyen looking at what Dinglehopper?
What's a Dinglehopper?
Moyen did not play starter decks. Apparently.
That card already existed. Set 1.
Yeah. So there's a reason why I don't like these, and it's not because when you actually do this, it's not powerful. It's because you're literally putting an item on board that says, if you engage in combat with me that doesn't kill my character, you'll be punished. And your opponent has full agency to not do that as much as possible. I think this goes into the item deck, the Tamatoa deck or whatever it's called. Maybe. Like that's it though. This card by itself sucks. I'm sorry.
And this is another support for our 7 cost 3/6 where we got 2 extra lore.
Yeah, that card. Yep. I forgot we started off with that.
The Grand Pabby says whenever you remove 1 or more damage from one of your characters, gain 2 lore. So if you remove damage from 2 characters, does it happen
lore?
Twice?
You get 4 lore. That's how it works.
Yeah, then I'm
maybe
4.
Yeah, but you're building a whole deck. You're building a whole deck around putting these cards down when your opponent is just like. I mean, Pabby comes down on turn 7. You put down your item. You played your Pabby. Your opponent goes, all right, sing, be prepared, play another Ursula, draw a card. You're like, it's just like I don't know.
I want to see Brendan come on the in the month's time saying like, oh, I got absolutely stomped by Grand Pabby.
Dude, there was one point my friend Sasha was like, what is the worst color combination in Lorcana? And I was like, oh, of course it's Sapphire Emerald. And it turns out Sapphire Emerald is like absolutely like the best color combination against Ruby Amethyst. So you can build that deck in a way that it's like, yeah, I got smashed by that deck a few times. It's actually the only deck I lost to at locals ever. I never lost to a single other deck. I lost to that deck twice, I think. Anyway, Grim and Gruesome. This is a Amethyst card. It's an action song. 3 cost, cannot be inked. And it says, play a character with cost 4 or less for free. They gain Rush. At the end of the turn, banish them. Yeah, that card's bad, right? That card's really bad.
Yeah, because it's only Rush, right? You can't if you could instant quest with it, it'd be better.
It also gets banished.
But why does the character need to get banished?
I don't know. Like you're already paying an entire card for this. I mean, you get to cheat the resource cost, right? So you're cheating 1 resource cost.
Cheat 1 resource cost. Your punishment is it dies.
Okay, cheat 1 resource cost and gain Rush. Would be, you could compare that to what's it called, Just in Time, where you cheat 2 but it doesn't gain Rush, right? And it still wouldn't be a great card.
And it lives, it stays alive.
This just kills it as well. So I think the idea behind this card is, we released 2 Merlins that say, oh, they do something when they enter and then when they leave. So we get both effects.
That's
but
it.
you still want to have your cards on the board, and then if your opponent wants to remove them, then they do something. But it's not like these cards are like they're like death rattle cards in Hearthstone, right? They are always, or they're usually inefficient for your opponent to remove. That doesn't mean that you want to kill off your own characters just to get a small effect.
Yeah.
I think the best combo you can do with this is, well, not the best, but one that just comes to mind is the Goat Merlin, right? You sing this with the Goat Merlin, you play it, you gain 1 lore, it dies, you gain another lore.
Sure.
That's something, I guess. And it's basically
I'm playing a 3-cost on Inkable to do that. Like, no.
Well, you could sing it, like.
I know, but this card is so expensive, right?
So the part where it does get banished doesn't matter if you have a trait where it dies off anyways.
True.
But that's basically where I was starting, is that even if this didn't say at the end of the turn banish them, I still would probably hate this card.
Yeah. And sure. I want to say to all of our loving listeners that are like, what about the bounce deck and like all this stuff? It's like, okay, maybe we haven't fully evaluated in that context. I think even that context is not that great. But we got to evaluate these cards like kind of individually. And this card in terms of rate is just terrible.
Also, if there's a bounce deck that's good, it still doesn't want to play this.
I don't think so. Yeah, I know. That's why this one is like, this one's an outlier. It's just terrible. All right. Yep. Vanilla creature. 5 card soldiers, full deck, 5/5 in Ruby, 5 cost, can be inked, Storyborn ally, quest for 2. Unplayable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't know, we would want a better stat line, or if we want something that is annoying because it quests for 2, we would want something like a Pongo or something that's cheaper. It doesn't need to be a 5/5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Next one is Donald Duck, Perfect Gentleman. It's a 2/5 in Emerald, cost 4, can be inked, is a Floodborn ally. It quests for 2, has shift 3, and says at the start of your turn, each player may draw a card. So this is, no, because that's a discard combo. This is really interesting that they printed this card. This is kind of like Howling Mine from Magic the Gathering, right? Different because it's an artifact. Yeah, so you obviously want to play this in the context of where your opponent is not getting a symmetrical effect, where you're getting something like you're drawing the card and they're not, or they're getting punished for drawing the card or something like that. Do we have anything that does that in this game right now to make this card asymmetric? Because
this card is asymmetric if and this card's asymmetric without any context, because you are drawing the card at the start of your turn, not at the start of your opponent's turn. So you have your card gets to impact play before your opponent's card gets to impact play. So it's already better than a 2/5 vanilla that quests for 2, but the vanilla 2/5 is pretty bad. So you would need something. So this is just like, oh, your opponent has more cards so that I can make them discard those cards, and I don't actually have to discard my cards. So maybe this is all right with the 5 cost that says your opponent has to sometimes discard 2. Can be okay with that.
Yeah, so this is like, this is a bad. Yeah. I think it's a bad card, but this is a good card for combo, and I think that this could slot into the already like the Emerald Steel Mill deck, which definitely was very inconsistent before. Because not even Engine is drawing you more cards, giving you more opportunity to see your combo card. You're also milling your, even if it's not in mill, right? Even if it's just a combo deck that's like, assemble these 2 cards, somehow win the game. Like combo decks play cards like this. They care less about the symmetry because they're playing a non-interactive deck. So cool card by itself. I think it's bad, but really interesting.
But this is not like, we called a lot of cards bad today. This is one of the best bad cards.
Yes,
I agree.
Not unplayable. All right, next up we got Dragon Gem. This is a amber item, cost 3, cannot be inked. It says bring back to life, tap and pay 3, return a character with card with support from your discard to your hand.
Why would you not ever play part of your world over this?
Part of what?
Part of your world, the thing that you can sing, you can choose any character. Support cards would have to be really good, and yes, you could use this multiple times, but you're paying 3 for the item, you have to tap 3 each time to do it, and it's only support cards. I think if this was return a character from your discard to your hand, it would be it's like Hades' effect, right?
But this is an item.
Yeah.
So I mean, part of your world you can do once. The upside of this is an item that can make you not run out of stuff to do. It's like
This is
So
like the,
you could
it's like the
compare this
Hades
to a
loop.
magic mirror.
Yeah,
The Hades loop.
it's
yeah.
like it's like a Hades loop, right? If you have a support card,
Yeah, sure, but I would compare this to like the beast mirror and the magic mirror type cards.
should draw that card,
It's an item that you put down, and then it is expensive, but it helps you not run out of stuff to do.
Sure. Okay.
It's actually a really
but
good
the
card
problem
against
is-
controls as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think this card's already not terrible because it can help you not run out of stuff, and that's something very important in this game. But the problem is, I think so far, cards with support were usually one of the worst cards. Not because the support keyword is bad, it's just that if a card has support, that's usually often supposedly their big upside or their upside, and then in return the card is a little bit understated or doesn't have another special thing about it. So I think in general I haven't seen a lot of good cards that say support.
I think the only one I can think of is, doesn't that Bodyguard Maximus have
Maximus
support? I
has
think
support,
yes.
5 cost. That is a decent one, I think.
Sure, that one's alright.
Still
So
quest for one,
the
right?
problem with this is this card would be good if you can have a decent card quality of support cards that you want to play in your deck, and then recycling those actually pretty decent. But if let's say you have to play worse cards in your deck just to make this item better, you don't really want to be doing that. And then if it's just a Maximus or something, then it's also not a good. So okay, if there's a lot of good support cards, this card's alright.
Yeah. And it's decent against control as well, because like the Hades loop is already like you have to keep one in hand. It costs 4. Yeah, so it's fine. I don't know if you can like. I think it's like a meta call kind of card. It's weird. Or like you said, there is a critical like minimum of support cards to make this playable. Yeah, interesting card. Next one, Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer. Ooh, this is my card right here. Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer. It is a ruby 1/3. It costs. Yeah, he's already doing the thing. It costs 3. It can be inked. It quests for 2 and it has evasive. Yeah. So Moyen and I are big fans of evasives. And we are big haters of Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor and these like expensive ones. And like, is the cheaper you make an evasive cost character that quest for 2, the better it is. So this is just like better Pongo. This card owns.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of evasive in this set.
Yeah, and you said there's some like evasive hate, like the 3/2 that's evasive on your turn. That would be perfect for fighting this Minnie Mouse.
Oh yeah, there's other stuff.
There's a lot.
There's
a lot.
other stuff.
Oh
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But so in set 1, when we were building the deck, we were like, oh, Mickey Mouse is terrible because you can, when this gets removed by something like Dragonfire, they gain tempo. It's still one card for one card, but they gain tempo. And then Tigger is the same thing. It's cost 6, but still pretty bad. And then basically we arrived that we want to be playing an evasive threat that is very hard to remove and can threaten a lot of lore. So like at least 2, basically, you want on that evasive threat for it to really be threatening. And the cheapest one was
Pongo.
So
And now it's a mini.
we liked this card so much that we started playing Pongos and Goofies. We liked Pongo much more than Goofy, but we liked Pongo so much that we were playing Goofies. And this is just one step further, one step cheaper. And I love this card. It's really good.
I love it when my opponents can't interact with my characters and I just...
No, I mean, maybe, okay, let's say game design wise, maybe there's problems with this, but they're already being handled with the evasive counterplay that you're talking about. But this card is really strong.
Yeah, very, very good. There's also an evasive character, which we covered like weeks ago. We'll do it in the full set review where you can shift onto this. And I think it's like pretty powerful as well. It's like,
it's the same stats as Pongo, but you can shift onto it. It's and actually
you get lore every time you play an action, right? You get like +2 lore.
No, after every second action.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Yeah, but still, yeah. This is better than Pongo, and we're big Pongo lovers over here. All right, next one is Christopher Robin, Adventurer, 2/6. In Amber, cost 6, can be inked, Dreamborn Hero, quests for 2, and says, whenever you ready this character, if you have 2 or more other characters in play, gain 2 lore. Oh, that's interesting.
It's whenever you're ready. It's not even on play, because we know that it's the Surfer Stitch sees a lot of play in the Amber decks, right? Because oftentimes you can have 2. I think if this was on play, this would be really good. I'm not a fan of whenever you ready this character. I think that because if you're if you're playing against, let's say you quest 1 or 2 of your guys, they can remove it. They might just have removal anyways. it's a lot harder to meet with that condition.
So there's a push and pull going on here. On play would gain the lore, but because it's on ready, it's a repeatable effect.
True.
That's the idea. That being said, like I know that there's other decks in the format that are not Ruby Amethyst, but you're playing this on turn 6 and you're saying, Jesus Christ, please be prepared for me because I'm about to win the game. This card is 6 cost 2/6 a quest for 2 if you don't get the effect, and you're also threatening like everything I put on board is going to future threat this. I think this card is actually pretty decent in like aggro decks. I do. I think it's a good card.
So this is very cheap character that kind of says, okay, in a worse way says.
Oh, it actually might say
for
quest for 4. Yeah, I'm kind of reading it like that too.
It's like kind of quest for 4, but you just quest for 2. If your opponent removes it, then it doesn't gain the extra 2. But 4 is a lot. But I think this card's not great. I was excited about it at first, to be honest, but I think it's a little expensive to just quest for 2 and then sometimes quest for an extra 2, because you play this and then it has to stay on the board for 1 turn, and then it quests for 2, and then it has to stay on the board to gain the extra 2. So wouldn't I rather want to play something cheaper that quests for 2, or something of this cost that draws cards or quests for 3 already?
Yeah.
I think so. Basically, for this card to be good, you would need to play other stuff that readies the Robin, so that you don't just ready it when it automatically readies.
Maybe. I think you're ultimately right here, and like the fundamental of it is that you're like jumping through all these hoops for this card to be on or even above rate. That's the thing, is like I feel like I come on here and I preach all about like the floor and being on rate and being consistent, and then like sometimes I just sniff a little bit get a little too high on my own supply, and then I call Christopher Robin a good card. But yeah, it's probably not, to be honest. There's just too much you need to be going in your favor, or this card is really bad, or it's just pretty bad. Like you would infinitely rather play Stitch Rockstar as a solo card than this card, I think.
Okay, but the Stitches, they are unfair comparisons because they're card draw. They have nothing to do with this card. But let's say just a Moana without the effect, or 1/6 that quests for 3, isn't that better than a 6/2/6 that quests for 2 and then sometimes gets an extra 2?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, and Moana without its effect is not a good card. So this card is worse than it.
It might be in set 2 with all these princesses, but yeah, you bring us back to reality. I think you're right on Christopher Robin. All right, next one is World's Greatest Criminal Mind. Action song, 3 cost, in amber, can be inked. And it says banish chosen character with 5 attack or more. You guys are gonna take this one first.
Interesting. You wanna go for it? You can go
No, Kawa, you take it.
I hate you, Brendan. Okay. I think overall it's not great. I mean, if you just think about aggro decks, how many aggro decks are like what's the average card is a 5 attack. No, like the only kind of cards I'm thinking of is you've got like Maui, you've got other things. Yes, it's really good if you can get rid of a card for that cost, but I mean, we've been talking about it all podcast. What is the most important stat in Lorcana? In our opinion, at least in Brendan's opinion, he's screaming at the past while here, is big butts, right? So most cards are probably, they have more health than attack. So for that reason, I don't think it's great. But it could be okay.
I think it's a good analysis, because even if you think about 5 cost upwards cards, often they're 3/6 or...
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even the cards that are 5+ attack, like a Maleficent, you're not... Like, if the Maleficent already did its job.
Thing.
Yeah, that's again
Maui already did its job. Like, all these cards that when the attack comes out, the attack value doesn't really matter, because it matters when the card is played, not when it remains on board, if that makes sense.
So basically what I would say is, in a vacuum, this card's very bad, but this card's actually all right, because I remember because I've played a lot of iterations of Ember Steel, there was iterations where I played Hakuna Matata. Just to have an inkable song to increase, because it's fine. If I just use it for ink,
it's a song.
And then it increases aerial consistency.
You're so right.
And I think this is bad. This is a pretty bad card, but some of the time it will be okay, and that some of the time I think is more likely than the one of Hakuna Matata. So if I want to increase my inkable song ratio, can sometimes be included in my deck. But like in a vacuum, this is bad. But for that context,
Brendan, are you hopping on the train?
Yeah, he's so
No, I was gonna say, so what some people will probably point out in the comments down below for this card is you can play support cards with this and make your opponent's cards get more attack and then use this to remove it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
how do you feel about that?
I mean, whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
sure. I mean,
people are gonna say it, so that's why
that's not good. But
yeah.
Moyen is so right. This card is so much. This card is way better than Hakuna Matata, and that deck might even want to play more songs than just Hakuna Matata. I mean, this is inkable. If this was uninkable, it'd be unplayable. But the fact that it's a song that you can grab and it has a conditional removal that will often trade up, and it's a song for that deck. I kind of lost where I was going. I mean, this is for the current iteration
for that deck. Yes,
every other deck.
But again, that's why I'm trying to look at, like, my analysis is kind of just looking at solid, the card itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
the card itself's bad, but it's an inkable song, so it's good for it.
Exactly.
And I think the support thing, I don't think it's that far-fetched. I think I hadn't thought about it before, and I think while it doesn't suddenly make this card from bad to good, I think it makes it a little bit better than I first thought, because a lot of important threats that you would want to be clearing with this are a little bit below 5 attack if your deck plays some support character anyways. Of course, that makes the card a bit better. I think it's a good point.
Yep. And yeah, I have to apologize, Kawa, because we do break our own rules all the time. We're like, oh yeah, we're validating cards outside of context. So we immediately go like, oh, but in this specific deck.
Don't worry about it.
In this specific deck. All right. This next card is terrible, unfortunately. So this is Sisu to Divine Water Dragon, 2/4 in Sapphire, cost 4, uninkable, Storyborn Hero, Deity Dragon, quest for 2, and it says, I trust you. Whenever this character quests, look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You may put one into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. Why would you want to do that?
I was so looking forward to it saying put the other one on top, and then
so you
can
do the
sing the top
Mulan
song, but no, to the bottom again.
By the way, I'm joking. This card is really, really good, I think. I mean, this is when this character quests, you're drawing a card off of it. Is it good enough for 4 costs? But if you can make this a repeatable effect on this body, and it's also questing for 2, which is a very non-zero amount, that's a good amount to quest for. Like, I think in Sapphire decks, like Sapphire getting card advantage outside of like very predictable cards like Rapunzel, which your opponent can play around, and cards like Stitch Carefree Surfer, which is really the only way they get card advantage. Like Sisu can be pretty powerful, especially if they're ramping into like the Hades and stuff to kind of help protect it, or they have any sort of semblance of being ahead on board. Like, I think that Sisu is a good card to be added into Sapphire control decks. Like, I like this card.
Wasn't there also like a mid-range threat that just says draw a card? Yeah, there was something. A 6 cost. Robin Hood?
Yeah.
Well, that's conditional. It's conditional. You have to have less opponents than your opponent.
Sure, but it's an easy condition to meet in a lot of Sapphire decks. And there was a new one added that also says draw a card. But okay, that's other cards. I think this card's all right. I think this card's pretty good. It doesn't need to be. I don't think it will be repeatable that often because it's a priority kill for your opponent, which is also already a good thing. But I think even if you just play this, it quests once, you get the 2-door, it replaced itself. You got 2 cards to see instead of just 1. I think this card's very good.
So this allows you to pair. So the reason why the control version of Sapphire decks is often paired with Amber is because Amber has access to the card draw, right? They have access to the Rapunzel, the Stitch Carefree Surfer. If you have things like Sisu in your deck, you have more agency to add a different color as your other support color. So maybe something like a Ruby, because if you currently pair with Ruby, it's just not great because you can't keep up with card draw of other control decks. You can't keep up with items like from Amethyst, etc. But you still have access to like some of the best removal in the game in the form of like Hades, Let It Go, Be Prepared, etc. So what Sisu does is it just gives you more of an engine in a control deck. In a control deck to now be able to play Sapphire with a combination of other colors that don't have card draw. So that's why I like it.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's a context-based analysis on these non-context cards we're looking at. But that is why I like Sisu, because in the early days of Lorcana, I mean the ultra early days, back when we were playing with spoiled cards rather than cards from starter decks or anything, like we had a very limited meta. And one of the best decks was Ruby Sapphire Ramp, because I mean ramping out big threats in Ruby is freaking broken. It's crazy. But in the context of current Lorcana, where like these items exist and Amethyst is drawing so many cards and there are so many threats that can be deployed and those games can go super long, that ramp strategy is no longer as good. And I think it's because Sapphire gets constricted on card draw and they pair with a suboptimal color in the form of Amber in order to try to supplement that. And the Amber card draw itself is pretty mid, to be honest, because like Stitch. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I think the Amber card was good, but yeah. So basically, blue gets ahead in resources, in ink resource, but at the cost of getting behind in card resources. So it needs to make up for that. Not first of all to combat yourself just using more cards because you ink some of them extra a little bit faster. But at the same time, you also benefit even more of card draw because you also have more resources to spend these cards. So it really, really, really wants card draw. So no matter what you pair Sapphire with, I think Sisu will be a good card.
Okay. All right. So Rapunzel, Gifted Artist 06 in Amber, 5 cost, can be inked. Floodborn, Hero, Princess, Quest for 2, has Shift 3, and says, whenever you remove 1 or more damage counters from one of your characters, you may draw a card. I can't remember how I rated this, but I think
you said it's bad.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. It feels felt win more to me. I mean, the Dinglehopper believers are probably going to be like, this is nuts with Dinglehopper, but I don't know. I'd rather be playing Stitch Surfer not too long after this. What are your thoughts,
Moyen?
At first, of course, I thought it was bad, but now that you mentioned it,
yeah, he's Dinglehopper.
Okay.
He's a Dinglehopper believer, yeah.
Let's say you play max amount of Rapunzel, and then you have maybe Dinglehopper, and then what's the other card?
The blue one, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Gumbo Pot.
Yeah, Gumbo Pot.
Yeah. If you have the Gumbo Pot, so basically, Gumbo Pot and Dinglehopper are still bad cards on their own, but if you can make it work that this
every
is like
heal you draw a card.
This comes down mid-game, and you consistently will have an item to heal something. And then you have that going so basically this thing that we're talking about, the items plus playing this and then drawing, is bad at the start, but then as soon as you get it off a little bit, then you can catch up to how bad it was at the start, and then you already have the items in play and you get more ink, and then it can actually become kind of good.
I mean, if you get it off and then you can actually play more characters to kind of take more damage. Like the thing with healing the damage is there's a whole other thing of like you have to have other characters that can either swing into things or that maybe for some reason you want to self damage. I think there might be one of those cards coming up soon, but like it's again it seems like I do agree that if you can get to the stage where healing for 1 is essentially just going to draw you a card, but then I find it hard to believe like that you're going to have characters that are always going to be damaged, that you can always keep healing, but yeah.
So what I like about it is that it's also, if you're playing it with Gumbo Pot, you're also in the Jasmine color. Okay. And
it's a princess. So Jasmine is a princess as well.
Yeah, it is a princess. Yeah. Moana deck incoming, is it? Yeah.
This is not synergy with the broken Rapunzel that can draw up to 3. This is more like, okay, this could be good with the items.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I'll say that
I want it to be good.
Yeah, I think the deck you're describing is playable. I just don't think it will be competitive. I think it will. Sure. It will do the thing. All right, and with that, I think we're going to pause it for this week and leave. Not for this week. We're actually going to release part 2 in about 2 to 3 days, so you guys can digest all of those spoilers and we get the rest of them. Tons of spoilers to go over this week. That's just sort of how spoiler season goes. Like I said, we're going to be doing next week on the normal pod drop. We're going to be doing an entire constructed overview that includes grades, so A, B, C, or D, and we'll be evaluating the cards in context, right? So there's a lot of cards throughout the spoiler season that we may have called bad or we are unimpressed by, but we'll be reevaluating those cards in the context of what kind of decks they could fit into, what kind of archetypes they could fit into, and other combinations of cards they could be included with to actually become powerful. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be reviewing every single card in the set, most likely if they're all revealed. But yeah, I think we should, guys, think we should close it out here. I know it's been a long one. So I want to thank you, Moyen, for joining us on your first episode as an official host on Podcana. Like I said, it's a joy to be able to talk to you and to hear your opinions. And like I said, Kawa, I appreciate you sticking in here with me for this marathon of an episode that was all these spoilers. But seeing new cards is so fun. I love it. Yeah, guys. Anyway, close it out. Yeah. youtube.com/Podcana. Review us on pod platforms if you enjoy the episode. It helps us more than anything else. It's super important for our growth. So we appreciate that. And we're all on Twitter. I'm at Brendan APG, at Moyen_HS, and at Kawatech_CG. Keep a lookout for that video coming in 2 to 3 days, which is part 2 to these spoilers. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you soon.